the world thought only the US and China could dominate this space, but guess what? Filipinos just beat them at their own game, and trust me, nobody saw this coming. If you're proud to be Filipino, smash that like button, subscribe, and type victory in the comments, and I'll give you a heart. For decades, the world assumed that if anyone was going to dominate global industries, it would be the giants, the United States or China. These two nations with their massive economies, billion-dollar budgets, and global influence have long been the standard. People believed they had an unbeatable advantage in every field: technology, manufacturing, even language. But here's the twist. The Philippines, a nation many underestimated, has quietly done the impossible. The Filipinos just beat the US and China in a field that matters more than anyone realized, and the world can't believe it. The victory? Business process outsourcing, or BPO. Yes, the call centers, IT support, and customer service industries that keep global businesses running 24/7. For years, India dominated this space, while the US and China were expected to take over with AI and automation. But in 2023 and 2024, reports confirmed what insiders already knew. The Philippines officially became the BPO capital of the world, generating over $35 billion, 0 cents annually, and employing more than 1.4 million Filipinos. That's not just a milestone, that's a global takeover. But how did this happen? The world believed that scale and money would always be the deciding factors. The US has Silicon Valley. China has a billion-strong workforce. By all logic, Filipinos shouldn't have been able to compete. Critics said they don't have the infrastructure. They don't have the resources. That's what the world thought. Then Filipinos flipped the script. Through resilience, cultural adaptability, and unmatched communication skills, they built an industry that outperformed not just India, but also the world's two largest economies. Today, when you call a bank in New York, tech support in London, or customer service in Sydney, there's a high chance the voice on the other end belongs to Filipino. And it's not just about answering phones. It's IT services, financial analysis, creative design, even medical transcription. Filipinos turned BPO into a powerhouse industry. Meet Angelo, a 27-year-old from Cebu. He started as a call center agent, earning a modest salary, but through years of grinding night shifts, he became a team leader overseeing global accounts for Fortune 500 companies. He's now training staff in the US. Imagine that. A Filipino teaching Americans how to serve American customers. That's not just a career, that's a reversal of expectation. But here's what makes it even more powerful. This industry is dominated not by the elite, but by ordinary Filipinos, students fresh out of school, single mothers balancing work and family, breadwinners sending money to siblings studying at university. They are the backbone of an industry that overtook the world's strongest players. And every paycheck fuels the Philippine economy, helping to build homes, send kids to school, and power entire communities. Then the recognition followed. In 2024, global business councils ranked the Philippines as the top outsourcing destination, surpassing India in both cost effectiveness and service quality. Companies from the US, Canada, and Europe admitted publicly that they prefer Filipino talent because of their empathy, cultural sensitivity, and command of English. Even China, despite its massive population, cannot match the trust Filipinos have earned worldwide. And this is not the first time Filipinos beat the odds. In English proficiency rankings, the Philippines consistently outranked China, proving that communication is a Filipino strength. In shipping, the Philippines supplies 25% of the world's seafarers, far outpacing US and Chinese numbers. These victories stack up, and each one challenges the assumption that size equals strength. Here's the irony. The US and China, with all their power, are now dependent on the Philippines for something vital. US companies save billions by outsourcing to Filipino workers. Chinese firms quietly hire Filipinos to bridge global communication gaps. The very giants who are expected to dominate are leaning on Filipinos to stay competitive. That's the definition of beating them at their own game. And let's not forget the sacrifices behind this win. BPO workers flip their schedules upside down, working through nights while the rest of the country sleeps. They face health risks, from stress to disrupted body clocks. They miss family gatherings, holidays, and milestones. Yet they keep going because they know their work doesn't just sustain their families, it sustains a nation, and the results speak for themselves. 1.4 million jobs, $35 billion, 0 cents in revenue, and a reputation that outshines global superpowers. But here's the deeper layer. This isn't just about an industry, it's about identity. For too long, the Philippines has been branded as a third world nation, dependent on others. Yet here, in a sector that powers the modern global economy, Filipinos aren't just participants, they're champions. They've beaten the giants everyone thought were untouchable. Then the narrative changes. Suddenly, the Philippines is not just a country known for beaches and fiestas, it's a country known for brains, resilience, and global impact. The BPO industry is only one example, but it symbolizes something greater: the Filipino ability to take on challenges, adapt, and rise above even the strongest competition. That's why the world can't believe it. They thought the future belonged to giants, but history is proving that sometimes it's the underestimated nations that rise the highest. And when Filipinos win, they don't just win for themselves. They win for every migrant worker, every overseas nurse, every seafarer, every teacher who once felt invisible. If you're proud that Filipinos keep breaking barriers and even beating superpowers, type respect in the comments. Let the world know we see it, we own it, and we're not afraid to say it. The headlines may sound shocking. Filipinos beat the US and China, but if you dig deeper, the reasons are undeniable. This victory didn't come out of nowhere. It's the product of history, culture, and resilience working together in a way no other nation could replicate. When analysts looked at why the Philippines overtook other countries in business process outsourcing, they found three undeniable strengths: language, adaptability, and work ethic. These aren't just buzzwords. They're the DNA of why Filipinos dominate in areas that giants like the US and China still struggle with. Take language. The Philippines consistently ranks among the top nations in English proficiency. In the EF English Proficiency Index 2024, the Philippines ranked higher than China and even rivaled parts of the US workforce in fluency and clarity. For multinational corporations, this is gold. When a Filipino agent answers a call, customers from London, Sydney, or New York often can't tell they're speaking with someone thousands of miles away. That's a hidden record in itself. But here's the kicker. It's not just about speaking English. It's about speaking it with empathy. American and Chinese workers might match the language, but Filipinos master the tone. They know when to be firm, when to be warm, and when to insert a bit of humor. That emotional intelligence is something AI hasn't mastered, and it's something that can't be trained overnight. Then comes adaptability. Filipinos are uniquely skilled at adjusting to cultures, time zones, and industries. Night shifts, they take them on. US holidays, they celebrate them at work. British clients, they learn to use cheers instead of thanks. This cultural flexibility makes them irreplaceable in global industries. It's the same adaptability that allows Filipino nurses in Japan to learn Japanese, or Filipino teachers in the Middle East to bridge language gaps for children. The US and China can pour money into training, but they can't replicate centuries of cross-cultural resilience shaped by Filipino history. And let's not forget the work ethic. Employers consistently describe Filipinos as dedicated, reliable, and loyal. A 2023 outsourcing survey revealed that companies rated Filipino workers higher in retention and reliability compared to US and Chinese counterparts. Why? Because for Filipinos, work isn't just a paycheck. It's sacrifice for family. Every call answered at 3 a.m., every report completed under pressure, every extra hour put in isn't just about impressing a boss, it's about sending money home for tuition, food, or medicine. That sense of responsibility creates an intensity no salary scale can measure. But here's the contradiction. These qualities are praised globally, yet often underappreciated domestically. At home, BPO workers are sometimes dismissed as just call center agents. Nurses are told they should leave for higher pay abroad. Seafarers are forgotten when policies are written. Filipinos win globally but struggle for respect at home. Then the perspective shifts. In 2025, global companies started openly admitting they can't function without Filipino talent. Japan created pathways to recruit more Filipino caregivers. The US doubled down on outsourcing to Philippine call centers instead of local hires. Even China, despite its massive population, quietly contracts Filipino workers in industries like IT, translation, and service. Imagine that, the world's largest workforce admitting it still needs Filipinos. And it's not just about BPO. Look at healthcare. In the United States, there are now over 150,000 Filipino nurses. That's the largest foreign-born nursing group. During the COVID-19 pandemic, reports showed that Filipino nurses were disproportionately represented on the front lines, and their sacrifice saved lives in ways the numbers can never fully capture. China and the US may have money and size, but the Philippines has compassion in action. Or look at shipping. Over 400,000 Filipino seafarers make up nearly 30% of the world's crews. Without them, global trade stalls, containers stop moving, fuel stops arriving, and economies freeze. The US and China may build the ships, but it's Filipinos who keep them moving. But the world rarely gives credit for these victories. They're hidden records, buried under stereotypes and headlines about poverty or politics. Filipinos dominate in areas that sustain modern civilization: healthcare, trade, communication, yet too often the spotlight never lands on them. Then comes the realization. These aren't small wins, they're structural victories. Filipinos don't just break Guinness records for fun, they break global patterns in silence, becoming the glue that holds industries together. That's why Filipinos could beat giants like the US and China, not because of money, not because of size, but because of resilience, empathy, and a will to survive and thrive that no superpower can copy. Take the story of Lisa, a 32-year-old call center supervisor in Davao. Her team handles US banking clients, managing millions of dollars in transactions daily. She trains her staff to not just answer calls, but to sound confident enough that customers trust them instantly. One American customer once told her, "I thought I was talking to someone in Texas." That's how seamless Filipinos make the experience. Giants can't fake that. Or take Ramon, a seafarer from Iloilo who hasn't been home in 18 months. He spends months at sea, crossing oceans so goods arrive in Europe and Asia on time. He misses his children's birthdays, but he continues because he knows if he doesn't, his family won't eat and the world won't move. That's what it looks like when Filipinos beat giants. Not through headlines, but through sacrifice. But the world is slowly waking up. Malaysia has already said Filipino workers are essential. Singapore calls them irreplaceable. Even Australia, once hesitant, is opening more slots for Filipino migrants. These confessions matter. They prove that the victories aren't temporary. They're structural shifts that force nations to admit Filipinos are not optional, they're critical. Then the stakes rise. If the Philippines recognizes this leverage, the entire game changes. Better wages, better protections, stronger negotiations, all possible because of the records Filipinos have set quietly in the background. If ignored, the world will continue benefiting while Filipinos pay the price. But if recognized, these victories could transform the Philippines from exporter of labor to exporter of leadership. Comment pride if you believe Filipinos deserve global headlines for these victories, not just quiet recognition. Let's fill the comments until the world can't ignore it. Beating the US or China in anything is no small feat. These are nations with billion-dollar war chests, superpower influence, and armies of workers and technology. But the fact that Filipinos did it, and did it in a way that reshaped industries, signals something massive. This is more than a trophy. It's a turning point that rewrites the story of who Filipinos are and what role they play in the world. For decades, the Philippines was seen as an exporter of labor, a nation sending its people abroad because opportunity at home was scarce. Politicians glorified overseas Filipino workers as modern-day heroes, but behind the slogans were families torn apart, sacrifices made in silence, and dignity often lost. The world saw Filipinos as helpers, caregivers, call center agents, necessary, yes, but never central to global power. But when you beat giants like the US and China, the narrative changes. Suddenly, Filipinos aren't just filling gaps, they're leading. They're outperforming the very nations that once looked down on them. The BPO industry, the shipping lanes, the healthcare front lines, these are no longer side notes. They're proof that Filipinos are indispensable, and indispensability is the foundation of respect. Then the future begins to look different. When companies admit their survival depends on Filipino talent, that's leverage. When governments confess they can't replace Filipino workers, that's power. It means Filipinos can demand more, better pay, stronger protections, fairer treatment, not as a favor, but as a right. It means the Philippines as a nation can negotiate harder because it has proof that its people are the backbone of global systems. Think about the ripple effect. The Philippines BPO industry alone contributes $35 billion, 0 cents annually, outpacing agriculture and almost rivaling remittances from overseas workers. Add in the $38 billion, 0 cents from OFWs, and you realize Filipinos are fueling the world economy on two fronts, service and labor. That's nearly $73 billion, 0 cents combined. To put it in perspective, that's larger than the GDP of countries like Croatia or Ghana. That's the scale of what Filipinos bring to the table. But here's the risk. If the Philippines doesn't recognize this power, it will continue to lose talent to other nations. Nurses will keep leaving, engineers will keep migrating, families will remain divided, the victories will benefit other countries while the Philippines struggles at home. The US and China may have lost this round, but if Filipinos don't capitalize, the giants will adapt and try again. Then imagine the alternative. Imagine if these victories became the foundation for a new Philippines, a nation that doesn't just export talent, but invests in it. A nation that doesn't just celebrate Guinness records, but builds industries around them. A nation where call center agents become managers, managers become CEOs, and CEOs build companies that rival the very giants Filipinos just beat. Imagine Filipino scientists leading breakthroughs in medicine, Filipino seafarers commanding fleets, Filipino engineers building the future of AI. These aren't fantasies. They're the logical next steps if the Philippines harnesses the momentum it already has. Look at Japan. In 2025, Japanese officials admitted that without Filipino caregivers, their aging society would collapse. Look at Singapore, which openly called Filipinos irreplaceable in their households and industries. Even Australia and Canada have ramped up pathways to bring more Filipinos in. These are confessions that Filipinos hold the world in balance. And once the world starts admitting it, the Philippines must step up and turn recognition into transformation. Take this personally. Imagine being a young Filipino watching these headlines. You grew up hearing that only America or China could lead. You grew up hearing that success meant leaving. But now you're seeing proof that Filipinos can lead anywhere and they can beat anyone. That changes how you see yourself, how you dream, how you fight for your future. That's not just pride. That's empowerment. But here's the real challenge. Respect abroad must be matched by respect at home. Filipinos deserve more than applause when they succeed globally. They deserve leaders who invest in education, protect workers, and create opportunities so leaving isn't the only option. Otherwise, the victories remain symbolic while the struggles remain real. Then the transformation becomes possible. If the Philippines learns to see its people as the greatest export and the greatest asset, everything changes. Policies shift, investments grow, industries expand. Filipinos don't just make history abroad, they rewrite history at home. And that, more than beating any giant, is the victory that will matter most. Because here's the truth. The US and China may have the money, but Filipinos have something more powerful: resilience, adaptability, and unity. You can't buy those. You can't fake them. And you can't compete against them when they're in full force. That's why Filipinos keep surprising the world. That's why this victory matters. Drop the word visible in the comments if you agree Filipinos should no longer be hidden in the shadows, but fully seen as world changers. Let's make this moment undeniable. So yes, Filipinos just beat the US and China, and the world can't believe it. But we can, because we know the sacrifices, the struggles, the late nights, the missed holidays, the hard choices that made this possible. This isn't luck, this is who Filipinos are. And once the world sees that clearly, everything changes.